Sit down and grab your lunch. It's time for the Bolts Brown Bag, the only show where you make the call.
It has been far too long, but you are once again free to eat lunch and talk Chargers football at the same time. Welcome to another edition of Bolts Brown Bag, our special NFL Draft Preview Edition. First round coming up on Thursday. We are coming at you from our 10 News Cafe patio. First time since the end of the season in December. And I am very happy to finally be joined out here by John Gennaro from the Mighty1090.com and BoltsFromTheBlue.com, Chief Mugwump Managing Editor. If you followed along online last season, we did a weekly podcast talking about each and every Chargers game, but it's good to finally have you in this seat.
How overdue is this?
It's overdue. It is definitely overdue.
Yeah, we should have been doing this last year, and I'm glad to be back in San Diego so we can do it regularly now and hopefully throughout the season if I pass this test.
Well, it's not like the Chargers haven't given us enough to talk about in these last 3 months.
Yeah, we're doing 6 hours?
We could. We're going to try to keep it to a reasonable hour that lets you consume your lunch and get back to work, hopefully. But we got tons to discuss, including what direction the Chargers are going to go in the draft. In fact, we've got a poll question up right now. If you're looking right on the right side of your screen, if you'd like to vote on where you think the Chargers will go, what direction they'll take in the first round of the draft, you can vote now. Got your choices up there. Quarterback. Certainly the most intriguing option that we've got going. Defensive line, linebacker, running back, defensive back, offensive line, wide receiver, whatever you think. We'll keep you updated at the end of the show, see where everyone thinks the Chargers are going to go. But it's that quarterback option, John, that has everyone in San Diego a Twitter about this team. And it was about a month ago or so that I think the rumors started popping up that the Chargers were linked to the Tennessee Titans and a possible trade of Phillip Rivers to move up and select Marcus Mariota from Oregon. And then that just exploded when the team went up with Tom Telesco and Mike McCoy and quarterbacks coach Nick Sirianni and Frank Reich, the offensive coordinator, to privately work out Marcus Mariota, a player that they'd have no chance of drafting unless they did trade and move up from the 17th overall spot.
Well, look, crazier things have happened. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was slated to be a number 2 or number 3 pick, and I think he was picked 20th, 21st by the Green Bay Packers. So at first, my original thought was they're just doing their due diligence. However, they only have a certain amount of meetings they can have with prospects before the draft. So now they're using them on a guy that probably isn't falling to 17. And I made this point on Bolts from the Blue this weekend. The fact that news got out, who went, when they went the night before, they took him out to dinner, all of that stuff. There's no one who knew that except the team. So to me, they were sort of pushing those rumors into fifth gear and saying, hey, look, we do have a legitimate interest in Marcus Mariota. And that's when the rumors really took off, because that's when it became legitimate. No longer was it just, this is a fictional trade someone came up with. When you're sending your offensive brain trust out there and letting people know you're whining and dining Marcus Mariota, you're thinking about doing something that could end up with him as the starting quarterback of the Chargers.
Now, Tom Telesco addressed some of these issues a few days ago when he met with the media at Chargers Park. He didn't exactly shut down the idea of trading Phillip Rivers entirely. As much as he said Phillip Rivers is our quarterback and we plan on having him as quarterback, he wouldn't come out and simply say, and we are not going to trade him. He just wouldn't say that, and that just continued to fan the flames. But he did at least have an explanation as to why the entire organization practically went up to Eugene to work out Marcus Mariota. So we're going to bring you some of his comments from a couple of days ago, and here's what he had to say about the workout of Mariota.
In player evaluation, we're never going to be 100% right. Won't even be 80% right, but we will be 100% right in the preparation. And with any player in the draft, if Dean ever leans over to me and asks me about a player and I'm not prepared to have enough information on him, that's on me. So, and then when it comes to quarterbacks, that we have to scout them a little bit differently. There's a lot more that goes into it, but that's just what we do.
Sounds reasonable.
It's the only quarterback that we know of that they wined and dined him. They sent the offensive brain trust. If we heard they did this with Jameis Winston, Sean Mannion, then fine. Then it becomes they're interested in a quarterback, not they're interested in this quarterback that's definitely getting taken in the first 6 picks of the NFL draft.
Now, there was reports that then they stopped on the way back to take a look at Brett Hundley, and they looked at other quarterbacks. But if they're keeping Phillip Rivers and are anticipating signing him again to at least another 3 or 4 year deal, it's really not time to start drafting the successor quite yet. So I don't see them using their second or third round pick on a quarterback in this draft.
No, this is and the metaphor that keeps popping up in my head is they've been dating Phillip Rivers for a while now, and the Chargers went to Phillip Rivers and said, "Hey, how about we move in together and maybe start thinking about marriage down the line?" And he went, "Eh." And so now they're looking at other people to date. They're looking at maybe someone else who might be a little bit more serious about the relationship than Phillip Rivers is right now, because he shut him down. I mean, the Chargers should come out and say, "Look, we went to him with a contract extension, fair value, this length. He's the one that shut us down. So don't blame us for looking around at other quarterbacks."
Now, this whole thing is linked to the Chargers' pursuit of a new stadium, both here and in Los Angeles. And it was really Phillips' comments saying that, he's not interested in playing in Los Angeles that started the whole idea, because then obviously the Chargers have to think about what they're going to do. What if Phillip Rivers really just absolutely puts his foot down? We move to Los Angeles and he says, "I am not playing. You either trade me or I'm going to retire." You can't be left without a quarterback in this league. You'd be in serious, serious trouble. So you can't really divide the other big issue of the offseason, the stadium issue, from this draft and trade rumor issue either.
No, not at all. I mean, they're essentially the same issue. I mean, the reason that Phillip Rivers gave in his in the story that Kevin Acee wrote in his interview with Darren Smith was basically he's not all that interested in going to Los Angeles and moving his family there and playing there and being a star in Los Angeles. He'd rather stay in San Diego. And even when those comments came out, he didn't make it sound like he was doing it for the fans, for the city. This was a very personal decision of his. And so, yeah, the Chargers have to do what's right. And I put it this way: when the rumors first came out, this is Tom Telesco securing his job for the future. If he gets left without a quarterback, he's getting fired a year or two later unless he gets incredibly lucky.
And whether or not the Chargers move or not, Tom Telesco expects he's going to be the general manager in San Diego or in Los Angeles, and it's going to be his job to put a successful team on the field, and a successful team needs a quarterback. So he has to take these things seriously.
Well, I'll help you transition right here. What most fans don't understand with this or with the NFL draft is general managers are almost never thinking about this year. They're almost always thinking about 3 years from now. They're only thinking about this year if they're on the verge of getting fired, which Tom is not. So he's concerned with 3 years from now. And the 3 years from now, he went to his quarterback to try and plan that out, and Rivers said, "Don't include me in those plans." So he's looking elsewhere.
John,
I don't blame him.
As long as we've got Tom Telesco on the brain, let's go back and look at some of the moves the Chargers have made this offseason, kind of setting them up for the draft, what they've already gotten accomplished and what they still need to get done this week in Chicago. And I kind of highlighted some of the moves that I thought were the most important. They're listed chronologically here. First biggest one I thought was the coaching hire they made, hiring Mike Nolan as a new linebackers coach, the former 49ers head coach, adding a bit of intensity and, on the sideline. I mean, Nolan comes with a reputation.
Well, and this is Ron Rivera all over again, right? Like, Ron got hired when Ted Cottrell was the defensive coordinator, and Ted was looking over his shoulder. And as soon as things started going down, Ted was out, Ron Rivera was in. And so now they've essentially put themselves in the same situation, knowing that John Pagano, as much as he is beloved at Chargers Park, has not had a lot of success. So now they put a backup there so that, let's say the offense is playing really well, the defense can't seem to put it together, they can just slide Pagano out, slide Nolan in, and not miss a beat.
I'd say the two biggest moves, though, were the two guys they brought back, re-signing their own free agents in King Dunlap and Brandon Flowers, both returning on 4-year contracts.
Yeah.
Two positions that if you had let them get away, you would have had a lot of trouble on both the offensive line and the secondary. You wouldn't have been able to fill those spots either in free agency or the draft if those guys walked.
Well, and Telesco got lucky here in that those decisions were made for him. If King Dunlap had a poor season or another injury-plagued season, we would have been a little unsure about what to do there. If Brandon Flowers had come in and played as poorly with the Chargers as he had in the year with the Chiefs that eventually led to Andy Reid letting him go, we would have been unsure. But both of them were healthy for the most part. They played great, and we knew that we could build them up as pillars of the team without an issue.
And then the other big starter that was signed, free agency outside Orlando Franklin, coming in to help shore up now that offensive line. Chan Reinhardt out, Orlando Franklin in on that offensive line. And you're starting to see, I'd say, John, the makings of what could be one of the better offensive lines in the league. Now, there's still some question marks at center with Chris Watt. Is Johnny Troutman really going to be the starter at right guard? Will they still consider? I know you've written a lot about DJ Fluker moving over, and that could be something they do in the draft. But they're starting to put together what could be a pretty nasty-looking offensive line.
The weird thing about the offensive line, and I don't know whether or not I actually like this, but I can see what they're doing. And what they're doing is building versatility. King Dunlap has experience playing left tackle and right tackle. Orlando Franklin has experience playing left guard and right tackle. I think he's even played a little bit of left tackle. Chris Watt is a center who played guard in college. Johnny Troutman has now played right guard and left guard in the first season before he was a starter. And DJ Fluker is a right tackle in name only right now that I think they're going to bump into right guard, but they can always bump him back out to right tackle. He even has a little bit of experience at left tackle if they need him there. So what they're building is depth through versatility. I don't know if that means it's a crazy talented offensive line. I don't know if they're going to be a dominant offensive line, but they are going to be versatile.
Well, we'll get to that a little bit more when we look at the Chargers and their positions and needs coming up here in a second. The rest of the moves, I thought complementary moves, adding depth at wide receiver and kick returner with Jacoby Jones, as well as Stevie Johnson coming in, replacing Eddie Royal. You kind of get two guys to replace the production that Eddie Royal had given you as he leaves and goes off with the Bears.
Well, and Jacoby Jones provides depth for next year when Malcolm Floyd is a free agent and he's like 38 years old, and Jacoby's probably going to slide into that number one, number two role that Malcolm's filling now.
You got some depth on the defensive line by bringing back Ricardo Matthews and signing Mitch Unrein as well. And then you got some depth at offensive line as well. Chris Hairston, who was brought in, and in the secondary, Jimmy Wilson, who could end up being a starter on this team, a kid from San Diego who's been with the Dolphins and has been a pretty productive player. So, you know, a lot done quietly by Tom Telesco this offseason.
There's a number of guys you just named that people are not thinking as starters that definitely could end up being starters. Chris Hairston is a guy I got my eye on. He could end up being the starter at right tackle with Fluker bumping into right guard. Ricardo Matthews, in all likelihood, is the other defensive end besides Corey Liuget because Kendall Reyes has shown us absolutely nothing. And Jimmy Wilson provides great depth, and with Jaleel Adai's penchant for getting injured, I could definitely see Jimmy Wilson getting on the field early and often.
All right, we're already getting some good feedback on our poll question. Which area do you think the Chargers will target in the first round of the draft this week? Right now, the leading defensive line or linebacker, 28%. Running back also at 28%. Offensive line at 24%. And quarterback, which probably means you think the Chargers are making that trade, 20%. So very even numbers.
Where's punter at?
Punter is not there yet.
Punter's not there.
Mike Cyphers is still on the team.
Kicker, I guess we got Nick Novak. No need to draft these positions. You got to set yourself up for the future, Ben.
Well, that's what the 6th and 7th rounds are for.
Fair enough.
Not going to happen. All right, can we get to what's for lunch today?
Please.
Hey, this is Bolts Brown Bag, so we can't do it without welcoming our sous chef from our 10news.com cafe. We've got Brandon Chambers, and we're going to get a camera. There we go. On Brandon.
Hey.
Hi, Brandon. Welcome back. It's good to see you again. Brandon was a contributor all throughout Bolts Brown Bag during the regular season. Bring us out lunch. Off season, I had to at least come and get your thoughts on what the Chargers have been doing. We just went through some of the moves on the off season. If you think it's been a good off season, and what you're making of all these rumors about Phillip Rivers possibly being traded.
I honestly believe that it's been a great offseason for the Chargers by picking up on more offensive linemen to protect the quarterback, whether they keep Phillip Rivers or they move on to get them a new quarterback. So that's a positive step in towards them making what they need to get for the offensive line to get them back going and rolling. So I like what they're moving with the moves with the offensive line. The pickup additions to the receiver core, that was some smart moves that they did by getting Jacoby and Stevie Johnson. So I'm liking what they're doing so far up to the draft.
See, Brandon's astute because he's right.
Yeah.
Adding to the offensive line is good no matter what you do with the quarterback. If it's Phillip Rivers, you absolutely have to protect your franchise investment. You can't get hurt. If you're going with a young guy like a Marcus Mariota, he's going to need all the help that he can get in his first couple of years. And the worst thing you can do, setting up a quarterback for failure, is not protecting him early in his career, making him skittish, his feet all over the place. So Yeah, I get
Well,
it.
and bringing back King Dunlap, signing Orlando Franklin, building up the offensive line. We haven't even mentioned the name Ryan Matthews. I haven't heard it in months because no one's worried about losing the team's #1 running back because we're so sure that Brandon Oliver is going to progress, Danny Woodhead's going to return, and the offensive line is going to be fine.
You know, Ryan Matthews was a productive player when he was healthy on the field. Absolutely helped the Chargers win, but so unreliable with the injuries. And with Danny Woodhead coming back and the possibility that the Chargers might, pick up an intriguing running back in this draft as well, I've got the sense that most Chargers fans are okay with the Ryan Matthews era coming to an end.
I'll say this as a known Ryan Matthews defender. There are a lot of people that point to the bad times in Phillip Rivers' career and say, oh, well, his offensive line was terrible. He was getting killed. And in the meantime, they're not giving Ryan Matthews the same benefit of the doubt.
So how did your season end up, Brandon? Brandon's a wide receiver for a local semi-pro developmental football team. So
Okay.
Our season ended pretty good. We ended strong. Unfortunately, we lost in the second round of the playoffs to the Downey Apaches. So, but it was a good season and a good year for me.
2 rounds farther than the Chargers made it
Yes,
in the playoffs.
sir.
So. Well, Brandon, I know you've got something cooking inside, and we'll feed John after the show.
All
right.
right.
It's good to see you. Get back with, I know Charles.
Thanks for having me.
Back, but
all right.
It's good to see you, Brandon.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, so let's move on now specifically to the draft this week and where we think the Chargers are going to go. And let's start, first of all, with Tom Telesco's thoughts. He's sitting there with the 17th overall pick, and at least, he's playing the game as a GM. He likes where he is at 17.
17 is a good spot to be in. I think we get a difference-making player there. And I also think we have some flexibility to go up or down if need be. So I like where we are in the first round. And really, rounds 2 and 3, I feel really good. We're going to get a really good player in each of those top 3 rounds and go from there. But I think we got the potential in the first round getting a difference-making player at a position. I'm not sure what position yet, but we'll see.
All right, to be fair, I've never heard a GM say, I hate that we're picking 12. It's just a horrible spot.
I can't stand this spot. Are you kidding me?
So uncomfortable here. I just don't like it. So, yeah, every GM's going to say they like where they are. But I think what he was saying about the ability to either move up or move down, 17, it can be very hard. When you're the Tennessee Titans with that second overall pick, and you don't, at least according to some reports, love Marcus Mariota, how are you going to get the value out of that second pick? You can't just not draft Mariota, but if you don't want him, then what are you going to do? You got to find a partner. If no one's willing to trade with you, you're in trouble. But 17 doesn't come with those complications.
And it doesn't come with really expectations. I mean, you get a guy at 17 and he doesn't do much his first year. They go, well, we knew this. We drafted him. He's raw. He's a prospect. But, if you're drafting second, that guy, even if he's raw, he has to show flashes of brilliance. You have to know that you got a superstar. At 17, if you get a reliable starter for 5-6 years, you've done very, very well with that pick. So, and you still have the chance of getting a superstar at the same time.
Yeah. All right, so we have both come up with a list of our top 5 areas where the Chargers need to address, in this draft if they can, if the players are available. And amazingly, we both agree at the very top of the list. And I'm not sure that this is the area that everyone has picked, but we have both, at number 1 on our Chargers area of need list, picked pass rush.
How could everyone not pick that?
I don't know. People are thinking defense. Everyone's thinking about the offense
No,
right now.
no.
More weapons for Phillip Rivers.
You lost Dwight Freeney. You lost Jared Johnson. Jerry Itachu showed you some flashes of brilliance, but he also showed you he has a real hard time staying healthy. And Melvin Ingram, at this point, look, I love me some Melvin Ingram the same way I love Ryan Matthews. Melvin Ingram at this point is the defensive Ryan Matthews. He's got to show himself to be healthy, to be anything. So now you have Jerry Itachi, you got Melvin Ingram, and what? What do you have behind them?
I had Dwight Freeney join me in studio last night on Sports Extra, Valley View Casino and Hotel Sports Extra, and not during our conversation, just off the air, I kind of mentioned, what are the Chargers going to do now? You're gone, Jarrett Johnson's gone. He kind of shrugged his shoulders and go, I don't know what they're doing.
And they didn't sign anyone. They didn't even sign a depth guy. So they have no depth there, and the talent they have is injury prone. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not quite as bad as what cornerback was last year for the team, but it's close.
Yeah, I definitely think that's I'd be almost surprised if that's not the direction they went in the first round. If there's someone there that Tom Telesco likes.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Tachu, showed some good signs last year. And as you said, Melvin Ingram does good things when he's healthy, but you're putting a lot of eggs in that one basket without something back there. So we both have pass rush as the top of the list. And for me, it can be a linebacker. You had outside linebacker, even a playmaking defensive lineman, and we'll get to that as we look at some specific players. Secondly, I've got offensive line. Winning in the trenches, just like Brandon said. You're going to win by protecting Phillip Rivers in this game, and I love the idea of a beastly offensive line. If you can get a big right tackle and move DJ Fluker over, or get a big right guard and, to be next to DJ, you got mean guys. Orlando Franklin, mean guy. King Dunlap, huge guy. DJ Fluker got some nastiness and edge. That would be a team that no one would want to play. Defensive units would not want to play that team if that was the Chargers' offensive line.
The only reason I got offensive line 4 instead of 2, I agree with everything you just said. The only reason I have it 4 instead of 2 is I don't mind the players that they have currently. I like Dunlap. I like Orlando Franklin. I like Chris Watt a lot. And I like Fluker if they bump him into guard. I like the Chris Hairston guy. I even like Johnny Troutman if you put him in a position. I actually liked him better at left guard than at right guard. If you put him in the right position. When we first signed, when the Chargers first signed Orlando Franklin, I thought they were putting him at right tackle, moving Fluker to guard, moving Troutman over to left guard, and that was going to be the offensive line. And I like that. I'm happy about that. If they go get another right tackle who's better than maybe Chris Hairston, good. I'm excited about that. But I think if they go with the guys they have now, they can survive and possibly be better than last year if they stay healthy.
So you got running back at your number 2 area of need, and certainly with Ryan Matthews gone, that makes sense.
Yep.
But it also kind of flies in the face of this new conventional wisdom in the NFL that running backs just aren't that valuable anymore, and you can get them later in the draft. You can get them like a Brandon Oliver as an undrafted free agent, and they can be successful immediately in the NFL like Oliver was last season.
Well, I took the question a little literally. I don't think because it's the number 2 area of need for me, I think they should use a first or even a second-round pick on it. But whether it's Rivers back there, who's had injury problems, who's had a problem getting away from the rush, or if it's Mariota or some young quarterback under there, between what's happening with Gates and the offense and the quarterback position, I think it's going to be really important for this team to lean on its running game. And I love Danny Woodhead. I think he's one of the most talented running backs in the league, if not the most talented. And I like Brandon Oliver. But I think you need one guy that you can just lean on, and they don't have that yet.
Well, I agree with you that I would be shocked if they didn't add to their stable somewhere in the draft. Whether it's a higher or lower, I'm not sure. We can talk about that in a minute, but I do agree with you there. I have secondary coming up next, and you put cornerback on your list at 5th.
Yeah.
I like who the Chargers have right now, but obviously Jason Verrett has had some injury issues. Brandon Flowers missed some time as well.
Yep.
You've let Sharice Wright go. You've let Marcus Gilchrist go. You've replaced him. You've added Jimmy Wilson. Eric Weddle's not showing up right now. I assume he's going to be back for the season, but he's not showing up right now for off-season workouts. There could be a holdout issue there. So I think depth in the secondary, either at safety or defensive back, is pretty essential to add. Not at the top of the draft necessarily, but you better bring some bodies in.
Well, I think the team had 2 really good cornerbacks last year in Flowers and Verrett, but both of them struggled to stay healthy, mostly Verrett, who had bad shoulders in college and had a bad shoulder injury last year, might just have bad shoulders. This might be a thing that goes with him. The closest thing they had to a third reliable cornerback last year was Sharice Wright, and he's gone. Steve Williams, not going to replace him. Chris Davis, I like some of the stuff I saw. He's not as good as Sharice Wright. And honestly, even if Sharice was here, I think the team would need to improve that sort of nickel cornerback, backup starting cornerback position. So I'm there with you. I just got a couple things above it.
And then I threw wide receiver in there, mostly because it's such a great draft for wide receivers.
It's incredible.
And Tom Telesco has already shown in his Keenan Allen pick to have maybe a nose for grabbing one like that. So I wouldn't mind seeing him pull another rabbit out of the hat in the 3rd or 4th round and come up with a keeper for years to come.
No, absolutely. And I think he should just, sort of circle his 4th round pick and say, I'm taking the best wide receiver on the board. Because there's a lot of them. You can get a guy in the 4th round that if he's not a starter day one, is a starter a year or 2 from now and very reliable. But I don't know if that's a need. I think that's more of you take the best player available at the position that has the most talent because you're going to get great value later on.
All right, so you throw out a couple of names, and, people who are really draft nicks and are into it are going to know all these names by heart. others, it'll probably just be a name that you don't know much about. But,
Yeah.
you know, we both want to see some pass rush. We both want to see some defense. I've kind of focused on playmakers as defensive linemen. The Chargers really haven't had a second D lineman in quite a while. And part of that's the system of the 3-4 and how it's designed. But they're going away from more of that and going to more of a hybrid and a 4-3. And so I kind of took a look at a couple of guys. Malcolm Brown, a defensive tackle out of Texas.
Love Malcolm
who's
Brown.
going right around, 18, 19, 17, where the Chargers picking. A very big fan of him, someone I think could be on the Chargers' radar. Eric Armstead, a defensive lineman from Oregon. Might be gone by the time the Chargers pick at 17, but if he was there, another playmaking defensive lineman, opens up the door as well for linebackers that, could help a guy like Jeremiah Tachu also put up big numbers in his second season. So those are a couple of the guys that I was looking at in the first round.
Well, I have Malcolm Brown at the top of my list, too. I think he's a very talented player. And as I mentioned earlier, Ricardo Matthews is probably the starter opposite Corey Liuget. He's on a one-year deal. Liuget's at the end of his deal. Kendall Reyes is in the final year of his deal as well. So your three starting defensive ends, all in the final year of their deal. Malcolm Brown is the type of guy, to me, that he fits in either the 3-4 or the 4-3, and the Chargers play both. But they're going to have a real need at 3-4 defensive end if they continue to use that as their base. And he's the guy that can come in and make an impact right away.
A lot of draft experts are projecting running back, though, for the Chargers.
No.
I don't know that Tom Telesco's going to do that, but the names, of course, are Todd Gurley and Melvin Gordon, the two top running backs in the draft.
Yep.
Do you think either of them could end up with the Bolts?
I think Todd Gurley could, only because there is such an emphasis on speed. And Todd Gurley, I mean, maybe he didn't run the fastest 40-yard dash at the combine, but we saw his speed in college when he was running away from groups and groups of people. I think if they're looking to get faster, specifically on offense, Todd Gurley could work. However, I hate him in the first round. I just hope he's there in the second.
All right, so here's what Tom Telesco had to say about how his strategy is going to be with that 17th overall pick. Whether he's going to draft, the old question, for need or for the best player available.
We've got some areas in our football team that we want to add to, and there's obviously more than one. And I've always said we don't rank our needs. We've got specific areas of our football team that we want to add players to. Best case scenario, there's a player on the board high enough at a position we want to add to. That's best case scenario. Does that always happen? Not all the time. But we will never, ever drop down and take a player a little bit lower because we have a perceived quote-unquote need. It's just a bad way to draft.
And he went on to tell a story about a time with the Colts when they needed a defensive back, and they could have reached for a guy at that point, but instead they decided to take the best player available, and it was Reggie Wayne. And of course, he's gone on to have a borderline Hall of Fame.
Everyone's got one of those stories, right?
Exactly. So you're not going to see Tom Telesco taking a third-round talent in the first round just because it's a position of need for sure.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
All right, let's move on. Another regular feature on Bolts Brown Bag, John, is our three-question segment, and we have Ferris Tanos from our web department back in. Always comes up with three good ones for us each week in the Brown Bag. Hi, Ferris.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, Ferris.
Hey.
He's cool.
Yeah, well, no, we're both web guys. We speak the same language.
There you go. All right, question number one.
So, actually following on this, on what Telesco just said, so the sure thing player in this draft, the guy that everyone's saying is the sure thing is Leonard Williams, but he could fall as low as 7th, and then you've got two quarterbacks that could go 1 and 2 that are kind of questionable. You're not sure. There's a lot of uncertainty there, so it kind of brings up the question: as a GM, should your philosophy be to draft for need or draft the best player available?
I agree with. I think it's a hybrid. It really is a hybrid. You don't draft a quarterback if you don't need a quarterback simply because that's the best position available, but you're not reaching for a position of need either. If you really badly need a linebacker, but the two guys you really liked in the first round both went before you, then you go to your second position of need and you take the best player available at that position. Would you agree with that, John?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to explain sort of why that is. The easiest reason is that the reason that there's not a lot of trades in the NFL is because when you trade a guy, you're responsible for all of his cap hit that was stretched out over 4 years. It hits you in that 1 year. So NFL teams almost never trade because it ruins their cap for that. Well, actually, it ruins your cap for the following year. If this was baseball, if this was basketball, if this was some sport where it's easier for a team to trade away a player, you obviously always take the best player available. Even if it's a quarterback and you have a quarterback, you go, hey, that guy's Peyton Manning, and I have, Stan Humphries. Obviously, I'm drafting Peyton Manning and trading away my Stan Humphries. But because the NFL makes it so difficult to trade away the players you have under contract, you have to look at the guys that make a lot of money, that are under contract, and say, okay, we can't draft that position. That one's locked up for a few years. However, of the positions that are left, who's the best player available?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
question number 2.
Question 2. So you guys talked about Todd Gurley. He's might be going top 10. The last 2 years, there's been no running backs that have went in the top in the first round. What's the argument for taking a running back in the first round? If you were to make an argument, what would it be?
There's not a lot of arguments right now for it, but if there is a transcendent talent that you think is going to be just so heads and shoulders above the other guys in the draft, and there's that big drop-off, you probably won't be able to get him in the second round. So that, if you're a later first round, then you think about, okay, we can go running back in the first round. But look at the example of Ryan Matthews, taken 12th overall. Has not had a bad career by any stretch of the imagination in his first 5 years with the Chargers, but is not considered remotely to be a good draft pick at 12.
No, not at all, especially because he was before the rookie wage scale, so he got paid a ton of money to be a very mediocre young
If he had been taken in the third round, everyone would say, wow, they get a lot out of that Ryan Matthews kid.
Right, what a steal.
Yeah, exactly. But because he was taken in the first round, he's viewed as a giant NFL bust.
Who's the last great running back who justified being picked in the first round?
Adrian Peterson, probably. I mean, the last guy everyone thought was going to justify it was Melvin Ingram, and he's been...
Or Trent Richardson.
Trent Richardson, who's obviously a bust. Melvin Ingram turned into an average to above average running back over a couple of years. But there is one case in which I take a running back in the first round, but it's very rare. If you look at your offense and you have everything else, you have a great offensive line, you have great wide receivers, you have great tight ends, you have your quarterback for the next 5-6 years, then you draft a running back in the first round because you know you're one piece away from having a dominant offense. It doesn't happen often, but it's actually happening this year with the Dallas Cowboys.
There you go.
Interesting.
You're thinking they're going to go first round.
I think they could go.
Not trading for Adrian Peterson then.
Not if they don't trade for Adrian Peterson. I could easily see the Dallas Cowboys going first round because that was an offense that drove them to the playoffs, despite the fact their defense was kind of in shambles throughout the year, and they lost the running back, and I think they actually replaced him with Trent Richardson, which is going to be a nightmare. So I think they're going to go first round.
All right, question number 3,
All
Ferris.
right. Give me a draft sleeper that you're excited about.
Got to get my notes out for this one.
I got mine here on electronic
I'll go first
notes.
since we were talking about running backs.
Yep.
And I had one in mind. Got to see him a lot in the Mountain West playing San Diego State. Got hurt during this whole draft workout process, so it might drop him down a little bit. Could be there, available 3rd, 4th round. Jay Ajayi of Boise State could be a sleeper at running back.
Jay's on my list, but can I give you 2?
Yeah. Go.
All right. On offense, there's a guy named Darrell Williams, who's an offensive tackle with Oklahoma. Bit of a raw prospect type of guy, but big, strong, powerful. He could be that guy that next to Fluker on the other side of Dunlap really brings the nastiness factor to the line. If he's sitting there in the 3rd or 4th round and they haven't yet picked an offensive tackle, I love him as a fit. There's another guy named Henry Anderson from Stanford who I'm not going to say he's J.J. Watt because obviously if he's J.J. Watt, he's a top 10 pick, but he looks like J.J. Watt. He's tall. He's roughly the same weight. He's really strong, and he pushes people around. He's very fast. He doesn't have all the moves Watt has, but he's got potential. He's very smart. We've actually interviewed him 1 or 2 times on Bolts in the Blue, and he would probably fit into a weird hybrid defensive tackle, defensive end role, but that's a guy that could be there in the later rounds and give you a lot for your money.
Since John got to do 2, I'm going to throw in another one as well because I've seen this player linked to the Chargers in mock drafts in later rounds like the 5th, and that is Quandre Diggs, defensive back from Texas, who just happens to be Quentin Jammer's younger brother. And Diggs came a few years ago, played in the Holiday Bowl for Texas here in San Diego. I think he had an interception in that game, but the knock on him is he's not tall enough. He's only 5'9" to be an NFL defensive back, but we've already seen Tom Telesco ignore conventional wisdom when it comes to defensive backs, especially with Jason Verrett, who he took in the first round. So you know he's willing to do it. Wouldn't be a surprise to bring in Quentin Jammer, the former Chargers' younger brother, as a late-round selection. Quandre Diggs.
Be one of the
Wow.
tallest corners on the team. 5'9".
Exactly. And then I love Nelson Aguilar, the wide receiver from USC, but everyone is starting to love him. He's gone like from a third-round pick now to like late first round in most mocks, so I can't call him a sleeper anymore if he goes in the
I want to
first
ask you,
round.
you mentioned his name earlier. I'm a Oregon State alum.
Okay.
Sean Mannion.
Yeah.
I think he's very interesting. He's an NFL QB. He's kind of built a lot like Derek Anderson was.
Yeah.
But a lot smarter than Derek Anderson.
Yeah, and I like everything I see from him, and I'm a big fan of his, but talent-wise and sort of arm strength-wise, I see him as more of a, I don't want to say career backup, but a career like Derek Anderson's that could make sense for him. I don't see him developing into a starter or a franchise quarterback.
Ferris,
Really?
thanks for the 3 questions.
Thank you.
We're out of time. These half-hour shows just fly by. We always end up going a little long, but
I want to do 5 more hours.
I know we
Ben.
can just keep talking and talking. Now the plan is, and if you're available and we can get it all together, is to come back next Monday, same time, 12:30, and we can review what the Chargers actually did in the draft Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
For you, Ben, anything.
Your game.
One of these days, we're going to have to get Shelly out here to cook something for us.
That's true. That would be fun.
That would be awesome.
We can add my wife's cooking to the brown
I'll
bag.
be here as much as you want me.
We got the final poll numbers in. Our poll question, at least for the first half hour. You can keep voting as well. It'll be up there as the show's up there throughout the week. But what area do you think the Chargers are going to target in the first round of the draft? Defensive line linebacker. We convinced enough
We talked
people
him into it.
that pass rush 29% is the leader. 27% though, right behind running back and offensive line. So I mean, this is tight. And then 18% say quarterback. They're going to go ahead, pull off the deal, and probably take Marcus Mariota after they trade Phillip Rivers.
So 1 in 5 chance that Marcus Mariota's quarterback in the San Diego Chargers. Huh?
Although all the rumors now are saying that it's not going to happen. Peter King wrote today in his Monday Morning Quarterback, not hearing, doesn't think the Chargers are going to trade it. It's kind of done a complete shift from last week. Everyone's saying now it's not going to happen.
Well, there's 3 more days. That's 3 more chances for it to shift back and forth and back and forth.
Which is more columns that you can write online and
tons of traffic.
Drive traffic.
Yeah,
Perfect.
why not?
All right, for John Gennaro, Mighty 1090, digital director, and you got me your card here.
Sorry, it's
Mighty
a long
1090,
title.
director of digital content and strategy, plus managing editor of BoltsFromTheBlue.com. I'm Ben Higgins. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Bolts Brown Bag at 10news.com.